For 14 years, I sent assignments against devoted believers who were fasting, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, 89% of my assignments succeeded. 89%. That means out of every 100 believers I attacked while they were fasting, 89% of them fell. Their fasts failed, their prayers bounced back, their breakthroughs never came. But there was always that 11%, those believers who fasted on specific days. And every single time I tried to attack them, my assignments failed completely. Not partially, not eventually, completely, immediately, absolutely. My name is Sibusiso Dlamini. I am from the Eastern Cape, but I did most of my operational work in the Mdantsane area and the surrounding communities. And before the divine set me free, I was what you would call a timing coordinator within a deeply organized dark network. But that is not the whole truth. That is not even close to the whole truth. The real work I did, I specialized in one thing, timing. I was the one who told our operatives when to strike. I studied the spiritual schedules of believers with the precision of a military strategist. I tracked their prayer patterns like a scientist tracking weather systems. I monitored their fasting habits with more attention than they gave to their own spiritual lives. And I placed assignments at the exact moments when they were most vulnerable, the exact moments when their spiritual covering was thinnest, the exact moments when the divine realm seemed farthest away. I coordinated attacks on at least 400 believers that I can remember, probably more. I stopped counting after year 8 because the numbers became overwhelming. And the success rate 89%, that is not a guess. That is not an estimate. That is not what I hope you believe. I kept records. Every assignment, every target, every result, every failure, every success. I documented everything because that is how our organization operated. With precision, with accountability, with results. But here is what haunts me now. Here is what keeps me awake at night, even 7 years after my deliverance. Here is what makes me record testimonies like this one, hoping that believers will finally understand what they are up against. There were certain people I could never touch, not because they were more devoted than others, not because they had some secret spiritual anointing I could not penetrate, not because the divine loved them more than other believers, but because they fasted on 3 specific days that we in the dark realm knew about, days when the spiritual atmosphere shifted so dramatically that our assignments would literally bounce back to us, days when demons refused to carry out attacks because they knew they would fail, days when the power of darkness was so diminished that even our strongest operatives could not accomplish basic tasks. And the worst part, the part that makes me want to weep when I think about it, most believers have no idea these days exist. They fast randomly, they fast when they feel like it. They fast based on convenience, they fast without strategy. And we exploited that ignorance for years, for decades, for generations. They thought their fasting was not working because they lacked faith. They thought the divine was not answering because they had unconfessed failures. They thought the breakthrough was not coming because they needed to fast longer or harder or with more intensity. They were wrong. They were completely wrong. The issue was never their faith. The issue was never their personal failures. The issue was never the length or intensity of their fast. The issue was timing. They were fasting on days when we had maximum power, and they were ignoring the days when our power completely collapsed. Today I am going to tell you exactly which 3 days make demons fear believers who fast. I am going to explain why these days create an impenetrable spiritual shield that no assignment can penetrate. And I am going to show you how to use this knowledge to make every assignment against your life fail completely and permanently. Because there is a difference between fasting that merely inconveniences demons and fasting that genuinely terrifies us. And that difference is what I am about to reveal. Before I explain the 3 days, you need to understand something most believers never consider. Something that changed everything for me when I first learned it. Something that will change everything for you if you truly receive it. The spiritual realm operates on cycles. Just like the physical world has seasons, the spiritual realm has periods of increased demonic activity and periods of decreased demonic power. Just like the moon affects the tides, spiritual forces ebb and flow according to patterns that most people never learn about. Just like farmers plant in certain seasons and harvest in others, demons attack in certain windows and retreat in others. When I was being trained as a timing coordinator, the first thing they taught me was the spiritual calendar, not the regular calendar you hang on your wall, not the calendar on your phone that reminds you about appointments, the spiritual calendar. the one that shows when demonic forces are at their strongest and when they are at their weakest, the calendar that reveals the windows of opportunity and the windows of vulnerability, the calendar that determines success or failure in spiritual operations. I remember the man who trained me. His name was Mandla. He had been in the dark network for 19 years before me. He was lean and serious with eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. He had placed more successful assignments than anyone in our region, and he sat me down in a small room in Nansane, a room with no windows and only one dim light. And he said something I will never forget. He said, Sibusiso, if you want to disrupt believers effectively, you need to know when to strike. A lion does not attack when the prey is alert. A lion attacks when the prey is sleeping. A snake does not strike when the foot is moving. A snake strikes when the foot is planted. Your job is not just to attack believers. Your job is to learn when believers are spiritually sleeping, when their covering is down, when their prayers are weakest, when the divine realm is farthest from earth. And that is exactly what I learned over 14 years. I became an expert in spiritual timing. I learned that most believers pray and fast with no awareness of spiritual timing. They wake up one day and decide to fast because they feel led. They choose random days based on their work schedule or their convenience. They pick times that fit their lifestyle rather than times that fit spiritual reality. And they wonder why the breakthrough never comes. They wonder why year after year, fast after fast, the same problems persist. Let me tell you a story that will explain this perfectly. A story that still bothers me to this day. There was a woman in Nansane named Nomvula. She was a devoted believer by any standard you could measure. She attended her fellowship 3 times a week without fail. She studied sacred texts daily, sometimes for hours. She gave faithfully, never missing a single month. She served consistently. She led a women's group. By all appearances, she was exactly the kind of person who should have been untouchable. But she was under one of the heaviest financial assignments I had ever coordinated. The assignment had been requested by her employer's wife. This woman practiced dark arts secretly, and she was jealous of Nomvula's favor with her husband. Not romantic jealousy, professional jealousy. Nomvula was the best employee and the wife wanted her destroyed. So she paid our organization a significant sum to place a financial destruction assignment on Nomvula's life. For 2 years, this woman could not hold on to money. I watched it happen month after month. Every time she received her salary, something would happen within 7 days. Her vehicle would break down, requiring exactly the amount she had saved. Her child would fall ill with medical bills that matched her bank balance. A forgotten debt would appear with penalties that consumed her extra income. Her appliances would fail. Her roof would leak. Her family would have emergencies. Within 1 week of being paid, she was back to zero. Every single month, without exception, she fasted and prayed constantly. I watched her fast for 3 days straight, crying out for financial breakthrough, her voice hoarse from hours of intercession. I watched her fast for 7 days, asking the divine to remove whatever was blocking her prosperity, growing weak from lack of food but refusing to stop. I watched her fast for 21 days, believing that longer fasting would bring stronger results. Her body thin but her faith still burning. But here is what she did not know. Every time she fasted, she chose the days based on her schedule. She would fast at the beginning of the month because that was when she felt most financially desperate after bills were due. She would fast whenever the pressure became unbearable. And every single time she was fasting on days when our power was at maximum strength. In the dark realm, there are days when demonic assignments have enhanced effectiveness. Days when the spiritual atmosphere is thick with dark activity. Days when demons are fully deployed and operating at peak capacity. Days when assignments move faster, hit harder, and stick longer. Days when the darkness is so dense that even strong prayers struggle to break through. And Nomvula, without knowing it, was fasting on those exact days. I remember discussing this woman with other operatives. We would gather and share reports, and her name came up repeatedly as an example of how uninformed believers could be. We would say, "Look at her fasting again on a Tuesday. Does she not know that Tuesday is our deployment day?" We were literally planning her next financial disaster while she was fasting and praying, believing she was breaking through when she was actually pressing against a reinforced wall of darkness. Her fasting was real. Her faith was genuine. Her prayers were sincere. Her tears were authentic. But her timing was completely wrong, and that wrong timing made all her spiritual effort ineffective. Like someone trying to plant seeds in winter, like someone trying to swim upstream in a flood. like someone trying to light a fire in a hurricane. This went on for 2 years, 24 months, 104 weeks, 730 days of failed fasting, 740 days of unanswered prayers, 730 days of financial destruction she could not understand or overcome. Then something changed. Nomvula joined a new prayer gathering. The group met in someone's home in the township. Nothing elaborate, just a small gathering of serious believers. And the leader of that group was an older woman named Mama Thandeka. Mama Thandeka had been delivered from dark practices 30 years earlier. She had spent nearly 2 decades in the occult before the divine set her free, and she understood spiritual timing in a way that most believers never learn. Mama Thandeka noticed Nomvula's struggle. She saw the pattern of fasting without breakthrough. She recognized the signs of a woman fighting hard but fighting without strategic awareness, and she pulled Nomvula aside one day and asked her a simple question. "Child, what days do you fast?" When Nomvula told her, Mama Thandeka was not surprised. She simply said, "That is why you are not breaking through. Let me show you something different." She taught Nomvula about the 3 strategic days. She explained which days carried divine authority in the spirit realm. She showed her how to align her fasting with windows when the divine power was highest and demonic power was lowest. Nomvula changed her fasting schedule immediately. I watched it happen in our coordinator meetings. The operative assigned to her kept reporting failures, assignment stalled, assignment rejected, assignment returned to sender. Target has developed resistance. We tried to place new assignments, they would not attach. Like trying to fasten something to a surface covered in oil, they would not hold. We tried to attack from different angles. Financial attack failed. So we tried health attack, failed. We tried relationship attack, failed. We tried discouragement attack, failed. Nothing worked. We tried to send stronger demons. They came back confused and frustrated, saying they could not penetrate her spiritual atmosphere. They described it like a wall of intense heat surrounding her, like a frequency that disrupted their communication, like a force that pushed them back before they could even approach. I was furious. This was one of my most successful long-term assignments. I had placed it carefully. I had monitored it consistently. I had watched this woman suffer month after month, and now is being destroyed by simple timing knowledge. That was when I truly understood the power of timing in spiritual warfare. That was when I realized that what you do matters, but when you do, it matters even more. Now let me explain how this works from the inside. Let me show you what we knew that most believers do not know. In the Dark Kingdom, we operate on a 7-day cycle that mirrors but inverts the sacred week. Each day has specific demonic activity. Each day has strengths and weaknesses. Each day presents opportunities and dangers. The day of communal worship is actually a day when demons are highly active. Why? Because so many believers are spiritually relaxed after their gathering. They attend their service, they feel good about themselves, they consider their duty done, and then they relax, they let their guard down completely. That relaxation creates massive openings for demonic assignment. That is why so many attacks hit on the afternoon and evening of worship day. The believer thinks they are safe because they attended. The demons know they are vulnerable because they stopped fighting. The following day is what we call deployment day. This is when assignments for the week are released and coordinated. Demons receive their targets, attacks are organized, strategies are finalized. The week's destruction is planned and initiated. That morning in the dark realm is like Monday morning in a military command center. Busy, focused, and purposeful. The middle days of the working week are execution days. This is when most assignments are actively working at full strength. Demons are at peak power. Attacks are consistent and relentless. The pressure on believers is highest during these days. This is when breakdowns happen. This is when arguments explode. This is when accidents occur. This is when sickness manifests. This is when financial disasters strike. The latter part of the week is assessment time. We evaluate which assignments are working and which are failing. Adjustments are made. Reinforcements are sent where needed. Now here is the critical information. The information that changes everything, the information that the dark realm has tried to keep hidden from believers for generations. Within this weekly cycle, there are 3 specific days when demonic power significantly decreases, days when the spiritual atmosphere shifts in favor of believers, days when assignments struggle to move forward no matter how much energy demons pour into them, days when demons experience what we call interference, like static on a signal that makes communication impossible. When believers fast on these 3 days, something happens in the spiritual realm that we could not explain or overcome. Their fasting created a shield that our assignments could not penetrate. Their prayers during these fasts moved with unusual speed and power, like arrows shot through gaps in armor. Their declarations carried authority that made demons genuinely uncomfortable, like sound frequencies that cause physical pain. I watched operatives refuse to attack believers who fasted on these days, not because they were disobedient. Demons cannot disobey direct orders without severe punishment. They hesitated because they knew from experience that the assignment would fail and the backlash would harm them. The consequence of attacking a believer who was fasting on these days was severe enough that operatives would rather face punishment for hesitation than face the consequences of a failed attack. That is how powerful these 3 days are. Powerful enough to make demons choose punishment over engagement. Powerful enough to shut down assignments that had been running successfully for years. Powerful enough to reverse curses that had been operating for generations. Participate now. Type in the comments, "I break every assignment placed against me during uninformed fasting." Do not skip this. There is power when you participate in a public declaration. When you name the assignment and break it together with other believers, you are doing genuine spiritual warfare. Collective declaration carries authority that individual silence lacks. So participate now. I am going to start with the day that surprised me most when I first understood it. The day that changed my understanding of spiritual warfare forever. Wednesday. In the dark realm we called Wednesday the day of interference. It was the day when our assignments experienced the most resistance, and for years, even decades, we did not fully understand why. We just knew that Wednesday was difficult. Wednesday was frustrating. Wednesday was the day when carefully planned attacks would suddenly stall for no apparent reason. Let me explain what we observed in detail. Every Wednesday, starting around midnight on Tuesday, there was a shift in the spiritual atmosphere. You could feel it if you were tuned to spiritual perception. And everyone in our organization was trained to be sensitive to these shifts. The air felt different. The darkness felt thinner. The usual ease of demonic movement was replaced by a resistance like trying to walk through water instead of air. Assignments that had been moving smoothly would suddenly stall. A financial destruction assignment that had been draining someone steadily would suddenly stop working. A marriage destruction assignment that had been creating daily conflict would suddenly lose its momentum. A sickness assignment that had been progressing would suddenly plateau. Demons that had been attacking effectively would report feeling blocked. They described it as pressing against a wall. They could see the target, they could identify the vulnerability, they knew exactly how to attack. But something was preventing execution. Like being restrained at the moment of action, like being paralyzed precisely when the strike should land. Targets that we thought were close to collapse would suddenly receive unexpected relief. Someone who should have lost their employment would receive a reprieve. Someone whose relationship should have ended would have a breakthrough conversation. Someone whose health was deteriorating would experience unexpected improvement. Every Wednesday our casualty lists were shorter than they should have been. At first we thought this was random. We thought perhaps certain believers were praying more on Wednesdays for cultural or denominational reasons. But when we investigated thoroughly, when we analyzed years of documented data, when we compared patterns across different regions and different groups of believers, we found something extraordinary, something that pointed to a deeper spiritual reality. Wednesday holds a unique position in the sacred week. It is the fourth day. In the ancient creation account, the fourth day was when the lights in the heavens were established to govern time itself, the celestial markers that divide day from night, that define seasons, days, and years. On the fourth day, divine authority over time itself was established. The mechanisms by which time would be measured and experienced were set in place. Order was brought into the chaos of unmarked, undefined existence. What does this have to do with fasting? Everything. Absolutely everything. Demonic assignments operate within time. They are bound by seasons and cycles. They depend on darkness to move effectively. They use temporal confusion to attack believers who do not understand spiritual timing. They exploit misalignments with destiny. They manipulate delays and accelerations. They create chaos and timelines that should be ordered. But on Wednesday, the fourth day, there is a spiritual resonance of the moment when divine authority over time itself was established. The original act of ordering time echoes through every week. The declaration that the divine rules over every timeline reverberates through every Wednesday. And when believers fast on Wednesday, they are aligning themselves with divine dominion over every time-based attack in their lives. I watched this happen repeatedly, case after case, year after year. There was a man named Saifo in the Mandansen area. He was a bus driver, a straightforward man with genuine faith, married for 11 years with 3 children, and he was under a marriage destruction assignment that I had coordinated personally. The assignment had been requested by a woman who wanted Saifo for herself. She had approached our organization, paid a substantial amount, and asked us to destroy his marriage. The assignment was progressing perfectly. I had designed it myself, and I was satisfied with my work. His wife, Nothando, was ready to leave him. She had become convinced of an affair that we had fabricated through planted dreams and carefully inspired suspicions. She had grown cold and distant because we had placed a spirit of offense between them. The legal proceedings for separation were being explored. The assignment was over 90% complete, but Saifo had a grandmother named Gogo Lungiswa. She was in her late 80s, barely able to walk, but she had been a prayer warrior for over 60 years. And she had taught Saifo one thing from his childhood: fast every Wednesday. She never explained the theological basis. She never gave him detailed reasoning. She simply said, "My child, Wednesday is the day of breakthrough. Fast every Wednesday and watch what the divine does. Pray from 6 in the morning to 6 in the evening. No food, only water. Focus your prayers and trust completely." Sifo had done this sporadically throughout his life. When his marriage started unraveling, when his wife grew cold and distant, when he felt like he was losing everything, he returned to his grandmother's instruction with desperation. Every Wednesday he fasted from before dawn until 6 in the evening. He would wake up early, pray for 2 hours, go to work while fasting, pray during his breaks, return home and pray until evening, then break his fast with a simple meal. Within 8 weeks, his marriage assignment collapsed completely. I remember the demon assigned to his marriage coming to our coordinator meeting in visible confusion. He said, "The assignment is unraveling. I cannot understand what is happening. Every attack I launch fails on Wednesday, and the failures on Wednesday seem to undo the progress I make during the rest of the week. It is like taking 3 steps forward and 4 steps back every single week." His wife, Nathando, who had been considering separation, suddenly changed her perspective. She could not explain why. She woke up one Wednesday morning and told him, "I do not know what has been wrong with me. I have been believing things that are not true, seeing things that are not there. Something changed inside me." She said something changed. The assignment had been broken. The fabricated evidence no longer seemed convincing. The planted suspicions no longer seemed credible. The spirit of offense was gone. And it broke specifically because this man was fasting on the day when time-based assignments lose their power. His grandmother's simple instruction, passed down without elaborate explanation, had saved his family. When you fast on Wednesday, you are declaring that the divine has authority over every timeline in your life. You are announcing that no demonic schedule can override the divine plan for your destiny. You are breaking the power of assignments that operate through delays, setbacks, and timing manipulation. I have seen financial breakthrough assignments fail because someone fasted on Wednesday. The provision that had been blocked for years would suddenly flow. The promotion that had been delayed would suddenly arrive. The business that had been stagnant would suddenly expand. I have seen health assignments designed to manifest in specific seasons get completely cancelled because someone fasted on Wednesday. I have seen relationship assignments timed to destroy partnerships on significant dates get reversed because someone fasted on Wednesday. Wednesday fasting breaks the dark calendar operating over your life. Participate now. Type in the comments, "I destroy every timing assignment over my life right now." This is important. When you participate in this declaration together with other believers, you are creating a collective spiritual force that shatters time-based assignments. Not just over your life, but over your family, your generation, and your future. The second day that made demons tremble was Friday, and this one you might think is obvious. You might think, of course, Friday is powerful. The greatest spiritual sacrifice in all of creation history was completed on a Friday. The covenant blood was poured out on a Friday. The victory over darkness was won on a Friday. And yes, that is part of it. But the power of Friday fasting goes deeper than most believers understand. Much deeper. So deep that even many demons do not fully grasp why Friday weakens them so severely. In the dark realm, we called Friday the day of defeat, not a day of mourning or remembrance. The day of our defeat. And we called it that because of what happened through that sacrifice thousands of years ago. Let me explain something that most believers do not fully realize. When the ultimate sacrifice was completed on Friday, something far beyond personal redemption occurred. The powers and principalities of darkness were actively stripped of their legal authority. Their weapons were removed, their contracts were cancelled, their covenants were torn up, their documents of legal claim over humanity were destroyed. Everything they had been using to hold people in bondage was taken from them in that single moment of divine sacrifice. And every Friday, the spiritual realm remembers this event. Every Friday, the echo of that victory reverberates through every dimension of existence. Every Friday, demons are reminded of their ultimate and permanent defeat. When I was coordinating assignments, Friday was our weakest day, not by a small margin, by a significant one. Demons reported feeling exposed, like being caught without armor in an active battle. Assignments would slow dramatically, like trying to move through thick mud. Attacks that had been effective all week would suddenly lose their power. Like a fire suddenly running out of fuel, we despised Friday, genuinely despised it. Friday was the day when our confidence was lowest. Friday was the day when our victories felt hollow. Friday was the day when we could not escape the knowledge of what had been accomplished through that sacrifice. But here's what made Friday even more devastating for our operations. When believers fasted on Friday, they were actively and intentionally reminding the demonic realm of their defeat. Their fasting was like a declaration that said, I remember what was accomplished on this day. I align myself with that victory, and I enforce that triumph over every assignment in my life. Every Friday fast by a believer was like salt applied directly to our wounds, like a victory procession through our defeat, like someone displaying the evidence of our loss every single week without fail. I will never forget a woman named Zanelle from a town in the Eastern Cape Interior. Zanelle was a primary school teacher, a gentle woman with a quiet voice and a compassionate nature. She loved children, she loved teaching, she loved the divine, and she was under what we call the perpetual failure assignment. This is one of the most devastating operations we deploy. A perpetual failure assignment is designed to make someone fail at everything they attempt, not one area, everything. Business fails, relationships fail, education fails, ministry fails, everything they touch withers, every dream they pursue crumbles, every hope they hold collapses. Zanelle had been under this assignment since childhood. Her father had been a member of a secret society in the region. He had joined seeking power and advancement. He had participated in rituals. He had made covenants, and then when he found the light and turned away from darkness, he left the society without properly severing his connections. He did not renounce the agreements. He did not break the covenants. He did not close the doorways. He simply stopped attending. So the assignment was transferred. The debt he had incurred was placed on his descendants, and Zanelle, the youngest child, received the heaviest portion. She had no idea why nothing in her life ever worked out, why every business she started failed within months, why every relationship she entered ended in betrayal, why every opportunity she received dissolved before she could grasp it, why every door that opened slammed shut before she could walk through. But Zanelle had a habit her mother had taught her. Her mother, who had suffered under the same pattern for 30 years, had discovered something through desperate and persistent experimentation. Every Friday, Zanelle fasted and focused her prayers on the covenant blood and the power of the divine sacrifice. She would declare, by the power of the sacrifice completed at this hour, I cover every failure in my life. I apply covenant protection to my past and every failure I have experienced. I apply it to my present and every failure I am experiencing. I apply it to my future and every failure the enemy is planning. The covenant covers me. The covenant protects me. The covenant speaks for me. For 3 years, she did this while still under the assignment. The assignment kept working during the other days of the week. Her businesses kept failing. Her relationships kept collapsing. Her hopes kept dying. But she never stopped her Friday fast. Week after week after week, 156 Fridays of faithful fasting. Then in the 4th year, something broke. Something snapped in the spiritual realm. Something that had been holding for decades suddenly could not hold any longer. I was in a coordinator meeting when the report came in. The operative assigned to Zanelle stood up and spoke with a trembling voice. He said, I cannot continue this assignment. Every Friday she reminds us of the sacrifice. Every Friday she applies the covenant blood. And the reminder is becoming unbearable. The blood speaks against me. The blood testifies against me. The covenant condemns me. I request reassignment immediately. This was unprecedented in my 14 years of experience. Operatives do not request reassignment. They are compelled to continue until the target collapses or until they are recalled by higher authorities. Requesting reassignment is an admission of failure, of weakness, of defeat. It carries severe internal consequences. But this demon could not continue. The weekly reminder of his defeat had broken something fundamental in him. The covenant power applied every Friday through fasting and declaration had become something he could no longer endure. The assignment was transferred to a stronger demon, one with more experience and more authority. That demon lasted 3 months before making the same request. His report was nearly identical. The covenant speaks, I cannot continue. A third demon was sent, the strongest available for that category of assignment. That one lasted 6 weeks, just 6 weeks before he too came requesting relief. His confidence shattered, his power depleted. Finally, the assignment was officially abandoned. After decades of operation, after crushing her father's dreams, after limiting her mother's potential, after nearly destroying Zanelli's future, the perpetual failure assignment was closed, and Zanelli, who had failed at everything her entire life, suddenly began to succeed. Her next business not only survived, it grew. Her next relationship not only lasted, it thrived. Her next opportunity not only opened, it exceeded her expectations. Everything she touched prospered. Everything she attempted succeeded. The only thing that changed was that she had persisted in Friday fasting long enough to break the perpetual failure assignment that had operated over her family for generations. 3 years of faithful fasting, 156 applications of covenant authority, and then freedom that would last forever. Friday fasting reminds demons of their ultimate defeat. It connects you to the victory of the divine sacrifice. It activates the speaking power of the covenant blood. It strips assignments of their legal authority, and it eventually compels demons to abandon their post because the reminder of their defeat becomes genuinely unbearable. This is the power of the second day. Now here is where it becomes very specific, very targeted, very strategic. The third powerful window is not a full 24-hour period. It is a specific 12-hour window from Tuesday night at midnight to Wednesday at noon. This window is what we in the dark realm call the gap. Let me explain why this window is so powerful, why this specific timing creates such devastation for demonic operations, why this window became something we feared more than almost anything else. In dark operations, as I explained earlier, the day following the rest day is deployment day. This is when assignments for the week are released and activated. Demons receive their directives. Attacks are initiated according to plan. The weekly cycle of destruction officially begins at midnight. Throughout that day, new assignments are being established. They are taking root, they are building momentum, they are creating pathways for the destruction that follows. By the evening of deployment day, most assignments are firmly in place and operating. But there is a transition period, a 12-hour window when the new assignments are completing their initial establishment phase and before the Wednesday interference begins. This window from Tuesday midnight to Wednesday noon is a moment of structural vulnerability in the demonic operation cycle. During this window, the spiritual realm is in what we called transition mode. Assignments are not fully stabilized. Communication networks are temporarily weakened as the system shifts from one operational phase to the next. Old protocols are concluding. New protocols have not yet begun. There is disorganization. There is confusion. There is genuine vulnerability. Think of it like a shift change at a large facility. The night workers are ending their duties. The day workers are beginning. For a brief window, neither group is fully in control. Mistakes can happen. Things can be missed. Opportunities can slip through the gaps. When believers fast during this specific window, they catch dark forces at their most disorganized moment. They interrupt assignments before they can fully establish. They create confusion in the demonic chain of command. They exploit the gap before it closes. I discovered the power of this window through observing a minister in a small township community. Pastor Nkosi led a congregation of about 180 members. He was a faithful teacher, genuinely loved by his community, and he was under a ministry destruction assignment that I was personally monitoring. The assignment had been requested by another minister in the region who was jealous of Nkosi's growing influence and community impact. He had connections in the dark world and had invested significantly in having Nkosi's ministry destroyed. A complete takedown, fellowship fractured, reputation ruined, family separated, ministry permanently ended. The assignment was progressing. I watched the congregation begin to fracture as spirits of division were released. I observed trusted leaders turning against Pastor Nkosi as lies were deposited in their thinking. I monitored his marriage growing strained as a relationship destruction spirit worked alongside the ministry destruction operation. I tracked his finances draining as a poverty spirit joined the coordinated attack. Everything was moving toward complete collapse. But Pastor Nkosi had received a word from an elderly intercessor who visited his fellowship. This woman named Mama Zoleka had been in ministry for 50 years. She had witnessed things most believers never encounter, and she brought him a specific instruction. She said, "My son, the divine shows me you are under coordinated attack, but he also shows me your path through it. Fast from Tuesday midnight to Wednesday noon every week. Something significant happens in that window. I cannot explain the full mechanism, but I know the instruction comes from a reliable source. Obey it and you will survive what has been launched against you." Pastor Nkosi did not fully understand the reasoning. The instructions seemed unusual. Why those specific hours? Why not a complete day? But he had learned that genuine obedience often precedes understanding. Action first, comprehension follows. For 16 weeks he fasted from Tuesday midnight to Wednesday noon. He would set his alarm for 11:45 on Tuesday nights. He would wake up, pray until midnight, then begin his fast. He would press through the early morning hours in prayer, sometimes until dawn. He would continue fasting through Wednesday morning, breaking his fast precisely at noon. Just 12 hours. Not an extended dramatic fast, but a consistent 12-hour commitment during a very specific and strategic window. By week 16, the assignment against his ministry was in complete chaos. I remember the report from the demon assigned to his congregation. He stood before our coordination meeting looking genuinely confused. He said, "Every time I try to advance the assignment, there is interference. Every time I try to communicate with the operatives working on his household and finances, the signal is disrupted. Every time I try to permanently establish the assignment, it gets reset. It is like constructing something on loose sand. Nothing I build survives through Wednesday." The operative working on the marriage destruction added, "I cannot gain traction. I plant suspicion in the wife's thinking on one day, and by Wednesday it is dissolved. I generate conflict one week and it resolves before the next. Everything I do gets undone. Something is happening in that midnight to noon window that I cannot overcome or work around." The coordination meeting descended into argument. Accusations of incompetence were exchanged. No one could adequately explain why a simple minister in a modest township congregation was defeating one of our most carefully resourced operations. Pastor Nkosi's fellowship not only did not split, it grew substantially within a year. His reputation not only survived, it expanded throughout the broader region. His family not only remained together, they grew closer than they had been before the attack. His finances not only stabilized, they increased as provision came from unexpected sources. That 12-hour window had dismantled a multi-year ministry destruction assignment that had been carefully funded, planned, and executed. This is why the third window is so powerful. It catches dark forces during their operational transition. It interrupts their communication at the most vulnerable moment. It prevents assignments from stabilizing before the Wednesday interference begins. And it exploits the gap that exists in every demonic weekly cycle. Now let me tell you something that will help you apply this knowledge with maximum effectiveness. The three windows work independently. Each one is powerful on its own, but they work far more powerfully when combined. When you practice all three fasts consistently, you create a pattern that demons cannot adapt to. Wednesday fasting breaks timing assignments and declares divine authority over your calendar. Friday fasting reminds demons of their defeat and activates the power of the covenant. The Tuesday midnight to Wednesday noon window interrupts new assignments before they can stabilize. When you combine all three, you create overlapping protection. Demons cannot attack effectively on Wednesday because of the timing interference. They cannot press their advantage on Friday because of the covenant reminder. And they cannot establish new assignments during the gap because of the midnight disruption. You become quite literally untouchable in the spirit realm. I have seen believers who practice this 3-day pattern become completely resistant to demonic assignments. Within 6 months, operatives assigned to them would withdraw in frustration. Coordinators would remove them from active target lists because deploying resources against them produced no results. They would be internally classified as protected, meaning no rational dark operative wanted to invest effort attacking them. That is the power of strategic fasting. That is the power of timing your spiritual engagement. That is the power of knowing what the enemy knows and using it against him. Participate now. Type in the comments, I close every gap the enemy uses against my life. When you declare this together with other believers, you are creating a spiritual wall that assignments cannot penetrate. You are telling dark forces that you understand their strategies and you refuse to remain uninformed. You are announcing to the spiritual realm that the days of random uninformed fasting are finished. Now I need to tell you something important before I continue. I have shown you the 3 days that make demons fear fasting believers. You now know the timing intelligence that the dark realm has tried to conceal for generations. But knowing is not enough. In my 14 years coordinating assignments, I watched believers try to break free in every way imaginable. Most failed not because they were insincere, not because they lacked genuine faith, but because they were fighting without a complete and integrated strategy. Fasting on the right days is powerful, but it is one weapon in a comprehensive spiritual arsenal. There are assignments designed to withstand fasting. There are dark strategies that adapt to prayer patterns. There are attacks that require more than timing knowledge alone to destroy. That is why I want to mention a resource called the 14-Day Deliverance Protocol. This protocol was developed by those who understand spiritual warfare from a deep and experiential level, intercessors who have helped thousands break free from persistent assignments. And I personally went through this process after my own deliverance. When I came out of the dark network, I was carrying spiritual residue I did not even fully realize was there. Assignments I had coordinated against others had created backlash in my own life. Connections to the dark realm that had not been fully severed. Spiritual doorways that remained partially open. This protocol closed every door. It dismantled every residual assignment. It established my freedom permanently. The link is in the description below. Do not delay. The enemy does not wait. Let me tell you how I came to discover the power of these 3 days from the other side. How the knowledge I used to harm became the knowledge that eventually set me free. For 14 years I coordinated timing attacks against believers. I knew when to strike, I knew when to hold back. I knew which days gave darkness power and which days exposed its weakness. I was an expert in spiritual warfare from the wrong side. But I never expected that the same knowledge would be the vehicle of my freedom. My conversion began with the woman I attempted to destroy. Her name was Longelo. She was an intercessor in a small gathering in East London, an ordinary community by any external measure, no prominent leadership, no large facility, no public profile, just a modest congregation meeting in a rented space. But Longelo possessed something that disrupted our regional operations consistently. When she entered deep intercession, operatives reported being pushed out of the surrounding area. Assignments would stall within a significant radius. Demons would become disoriented and confused. Entire weeks of planned operations would collapse because of this one woman's prayers. We had never encountered anything quite like it. One person praying in a township home causing chaos in our organized operations across an entire region. So I was assigned to coordinate her destruction personally. This was a priority target. Resources were allocated, multiple operatives were assigned. I was given full authority to deploy whatever was necessary. For 6 months I studied her. I learned her patterns. I identified her relationships. I mapped her vulnerabilities. I prepared a comprehensive assignment designed to break her completely. The assignment included financial devastation, loss of employment and savings, relationship destruction, isolation from her closest connections, health deterioration, chronic physical weakness, and most strategically, spiritual discouragement. She would stop praying because she would conclude that the divine had abandoned her. I launched the assignment on an early morning. By the following afternoon, she had received notice that her position was being eliminated. By 2 days later, her landlord informed her she had 30 days to vacate. By 3 days later, her medical examination returned concerning results. By 4 days later, her closest friend accused her of something false, and their relationship ended in tears and anger. Everything was moving according to plan. The assignment was progressing faster than I had anticipated. She appeared more vulnerable than I had calculated. I expected her to begin questioning everything. I expected her to stop praying in order to focus on the mounting practical crisis. When overwhelming difficulty arrives, most believers abandon their spiritual disciplines to address the external chaos. That is when dark assignments achieve their final objectives. But Langelo did something I did not anticipate. She fasted on the 3 days. On Wednesday, she completed a full-day fast focused on divine authority over her circumstances. She declared, "You created time, you govern time. No dark schedule can override your plan for my life. My employment loss is not the conclusion. My eviction is not the conclusion. My times are held by you and you alone." On Friday, she fasted and applied covenant authority to every attack. She declared, "By the power of the covenant completed on this day, I am covered. I am provided for. I am protected. I am victorious. The covenant speaks for me. The covenant fights for me. The covenant prevails for me." On Tuesday night at midnight, she woke up and began fasting until Wednesday noon. She declared, "I interrupt every assignment against my life. I disrupt every dark plan. I introduce confusion into every coordinated strategy against my destiny. Nothing the enemy has planned will stand. Nothing the enemy has initiated will reach completion." She maintained this for 4 consecutive weeks, while her life was visibly falling apart, while she had no employment, while she was searching for alternative housing, while awaiting medical clarification, while her primary friendship was shattered. In the middle of complete external crisis, she fasted with strategic precision. By the end of the 4th week, every assignment I had placed against her had completely failed. The organization that had dismissed her called back. There had been an error. They needed her. Would she return at an improved position? The landlord reversed his decision. He was no longer selling. She could remain. The medical follow-up returned clear results. The initial findings had been a laboratory error. Her friend discovered she had been deliberately misled. She arrived at Langelo's door in tears, requesting forgiveness. But it was worse than that for me. The assignment did not simply fail. It reversed. The demons I had sent against her began to attack me. The financial problems I had designed for her manifested in my own life. My reserves drained inexplicably. Unexpected debts appeared. My vehicle was stolen. My home was broken into. The relationship destruction I had coordinated began affecting my own household. My wife grew suspicious without basis. My children withdrew. My mother ceased contact. The health deterioration I had assigned to Langelo began appearing in my own body. Headaches that would not stop, abdominal pain without identifiable cause, weakness that drained my daily functioning. I was experiencing what we internally called full reversal. When an assignment fails severely enough, it returns to the coordinator with amplified force, and it was dismantling my life systematically. For 3 months I suffered. I could not understand the mechanism. I had been in the dark network for 14 years. I had coordinated hundreds of assignments. I had never experienced reversal of this intensity. Then I received a visitor. Langelo appeared at my door. I do not know how she located my address. I do not know how she identified me. I do not know how she possessed the courage to stand at the door of someone who had spent months orchestrating her destruction. She knocked on a Wednesday afternoon. When I opened the door and saw her face, I felt something I had not experienced in 14 years. Genuine fear, not of her, not of any threat she represented, but of the reality her presence confronted me with. She looked at me with an expression I could not categorize. It was not anger, it was not revenge, it was not contempt, it was compassion. She said simply, "I was shown that someone launched a coordinated attack against me. I was also shown that the one responsible is now suffering from the effects of that failed assignment, and I was directed to find you." I could not form words. In 14 years of operational work, I had never been identified by a target. I had never been confronted face to face. I had never had someone look directly at me with full knowledge of what I had done. She was not there to expose me. She was not there to retaliate. She was there to offer freedom. She said, "The same fasting that broke your assignment against me can break the chains on your own life." Will you allow me to show you how? I cannot fully explain why I said yes. Perhaps it was the suffering I had endured for months. Perhaps it was the weight of confronting the full reality of what I had done. Perhaps it was something deeper and less explicable. Something that felt like a hand extended into absolute darkness offering a path upward. But I said yes. For the following 3 months, Langelo taught me about covenant fasting. She explained why Wednesday dismantles timing assignments. She explained why Friday reminds demons of their permanent defeat. She walked me through the mechanics of the midnight to noon gap. She taught me everything I had learned from inside the darkness, but now from the perspective of light. And then she guided me through full deliverance. I fasted on all 3 days for 12 weeks. I made formal declarations of freedom over every assignment I had coordinated. I renounced every connection to the dark network. I broke every covenant I had entered. I closed every doorway I had opened. I surrendered my life completely to the divine. And everything changed. The reversal stopped immediately, not gradually, immediately. The day I surrendered, the backlash that had been destroying me lifted completely. My finances stabilized, my family was restored, my health returned. Everything that had been taken in those months was recovered. That is why I am here today. That is why I share these specific details. Because what darkness intended for permanent destruction, the divine converted into the foundation of my freedom and my calling. Let me leave you with one final account before I close. A family in Port Elizabeth, a father, a mother, and 3 children. They had lived under generational financial limitation for 4 consecutive generations. Great-grandparents in poverty, grandparents in poverty, parents in poverty, and this family struggling as well. No matter what the father attempted, no matter how diligently the mother worked, no matter what opportunities appeared, financial limitation followed them like a shadow that could not be separated from them. They received teaching on strategic fasting, not from me, from another believer who understood these principles from experience, and they decided together as a family to fast on the 3 windows. Every Wednesday, the entire family fasted together. Every Friday, the entire family fasted together. Every Tuesday night through Wednesday noon, the parents fasted while the children engaged in focused prayer. They maintained this as a family commitment for 6 months, 26 weeks, 78 individual fasting periods as a unified household unit. At the end of 6 months, the generational financial limitation that had constrained their family across 4 generations was completely broken. The father received advancement he had not requested or expected. The mother launched a business that exceeded every reasonable expectation. The children began performing at levels that had seemed beyond their reach. Opportunities that had never existed for this family suddenly materialized. Resources that had never stayed in their hands began to accumulate. Provision that had always been scarce became genuinely abundant. 4 generations of limitation dismantled in 6 months by a family who learned when to fast together. That is the full weight of what I am sharing with you today. Not only personal breakthrough, generational breakthrough, not only your freedom, your family's freedom, not only your victory, your children's victory, and your grandchildren's inheritance. So take everything I have shared today and act on it. Do not only receive it as information, deploy it as strategy. Wednesday fasting breaks timing assignments and declares divine authority over every schedule in your life. Every delay the enemy has engineered, every opportunity he has blocked, every season he has attempted to steal. Wednesday fasting dismantles all of it. Friday fasting reminds demons of their ultimate and permanent defeat. The covenant blood speaks on your behalf. The victory of the divine sacrifice is enforced in your life. Every demon assigned against you is confronted with the reality that they have already lost and cannot recover from that loss. Tuesday midnight to Wednesday. Noon fasting interrupts demonic communication and prevents new assignments from establishing permanent roots. The gap is exploited. The transition period is disrupted. Nothing the enemy attempts to build in that window can survive. When you combine all 3, you create a protective pattern that dark forces cannot penetrate or adapt to. They cannot attack effectively on Wednesday. They cannot press on Friday. They cannot establish during the gap. You become classified as protected in every dark operational database. You become someone that no rational demonic operative wants to invest resources against, And if you want the complete protocol for dismantling every category of assignment in your life, the 14-day deliverance resource is waiting for you in the description. Do not wait to apply this knowledge. The enemy is not waiting. Right now, assignments are being coordinated. Right now, operatives are studying your patterns. Right now, attacks are being timed for maximum impact. But starting this week, you can change all of it. Fast on Wednesday, fast on Friday. Fast from Tuesday midnight to Wednesday noon. Do this consistently for 12 weeks and observe the transformation in your spiritual experience. Observe how attacks that used to succeed begin to fail. Observe how breakthroughs that seemed permanently blocked begin to manifest. Observe how demons that used to operate freely in your atmosphere begin to avoid you entirely. This is the power of strategic fasting. This is the intelligence the dark realm has tried to conceal from believers for generations. And now it is yours. My name is Sibusiso Dlamini. I am from the Eastern Cape. I spent 14 years coordinating timing attacks against believers. Now I spend my remaining years teaching those same believers how to make every dark assignment against them fail completely. May your fasting be strategic. May your prayers be unblockable. May every assignment against your life shatter on contact with your consecrated discipline. Let us close in prayer. Sovereign of all creation, I bring before you everyone who has received this testimony today. I declare that the knowledge shared in this hour will transform their spiritual lives from this moment forward. I break every timing assignment operating against them right now. I dismantle every dark schedule that has been planned against their destiny. I cancel every attack that has been timed for their destruction. Grant them the discipline to fast on the 3 windows. Grant them the consistency to maintain the pattern when opposition comes. Grant them the unshakable confidence that the darkness must yield to the light that lives within them. And when the enemy comes against them, let him find nothing but divine fire waiting. Let every assignment return to the one who sent it. Let every operative report that this target is covered and inaccessible. May it be so now and in all the days that follow.